Welcome back to TLDR's daily briefing for Thursday, the 20th of February, 2025. In today's episode, we cover Hamas returning dead hostages to Israel and the conviction of former Spanish Football Federation chief Luis Rubiales. But first, the US rejects a UN resolution on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The US is refusing to co-sponsor a draft UN resolution marking 3 years since Russia's invasion of Ukraine that supports Kyiv's territorial integrity and condemns Russian aggression. It marks a stark shift by Ukraine's most powerful Western ally, who's been a co-sponsor of almost all UN resolutions in support of Ukraine against Russia. Whilst the UN vote could still go ahead without the US, it may be less likely to win broad support in the General Assembly. This step mirrors the widening rift between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and US President Donald Trump, who is rapidly trying to end the war, and who has seemingly shifted towards Russia's position on the war. Earlier this week, Trump's team, led by his Secretary of State Marco Rubio, held talks with Russia in Saudi Arabia, but Ukraine wasn't invited. Zelensky said that he was surprised his country had not been invited to the talks, and in response, Trump said he was disappointed by Ukraine's reaction, and seemingly blamed Ukraine for starting the war, saying the country could have made a deal earlier. Trump also made a dig at Zelensky, claiming falsely that his approval ratings had fallen to 4%. And in an echo of Vladimir Putin, Trump also put pressure on Zelensky to hold elections in Ukraine. Ukraine's last election was in 2019, as elections are suspended until martial law ends, and martial law has been extended more than a dozen times since the start of the war, with the approval of the Ukrainian parliament. Today, Zelensky met with the US president's envoy, but a subsequent press conference was cancelled without warning at Washington's request. Meanwhile, as the G7 prepares to release its annual statement condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Trump has suggested that Russia should be invited back into the G7. In fact, in the new G7 communiqué, the US is reportedly opposing the use of the term aggressor when referring to Russia. American representatives have also objected to phrases like Russian aggression and other terms which have been used to describe the war since 2022. You're listening to TLDR's Daily Briefing. If you want more explainers on what's happening in the world, then you should check out TLDR's YouTube channels. Today, we released videos on Japan's warming relations with China and whether Trump could force elections on Ukraine. You can find those videos linked in the description or show notes for this episode, or by searching for TLDR on YouTube. In news from the Middle East, Hamas has returned the bodies of dead Israeli hostages for the first time since the agreed ceasefire last month. The remains of 4 people, reported to be 33-year-old Shiri Bibas, her 2 children, Ariel and Kfir, plus an elderly man, Oded Lifshit, were handed to the Red Cross in black coffins in Khan Yunis this morning. They were then transferred to Israeli forces in Gaza and taken to Israel, where they will undergo post-mortems. Israel has not yet confirmed the identities of the bodies, and it isn't clear yet how they died. In November 2023, Hamas said that Shiri Bibas and her 2 children had been killed in an Israeli airstrike, claims that Israel rejected. So far, 28 hostages and more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners have been exchanged in the first phase of the ceasefire agreement. The 2 sides agreed to exchange 33 hostages for about 1,900 prisoners by the end of the first 6 weeks, which is on the 1st of March. A US House of Representatives committee has warned against China's plan to build a Superembassy in London, saying the project raises, quote, significant security concerns for the UK financial services industry. The US House China Committee wrote on X, the People's Republic of China mega embassy in the UK raises significant security concerns, from interference and surveillance to risks for sensitive infrastructure like London's financial services. We must work to urgently address this issue and work with our allies to protect national security. For context, China bought the 620,000 square foot premises of the former Royal Mint in North London in 2018, which it wants to turn into its largest diplomatic mission in Europe. However, the Superembassy is highly controversial, with local residents and anti-CCP activists having protested against what they argue could become an espionage hub. We recently released a full video explaining the controversy, which you can find on the TLDR UK YouTube channel and linked in today's show notes. Finally, the former head of the Spanish Football Federation, Luis Rubiales, has been found guilty of sexually assaulting footballer Jenni Hermoso by kissing her on the lips without consent after Spain won the 2023 Women's Football World Cup. On Thursday morning, Spain's High Court convicted Rubiales of sexual assault and ordered him to pay a fine of €10,800, but acquitted him of coercion over allegations that he put pressure on Hermoso to say the kiss was consensual. The ruling also bans Rubiales from going within a 200-metre radius of Hermoso and from communicating with her for 1 year. In the verdict, the Spanish judge ruled that Rubiales had sexually assaulted Hermoso when he, quote, grabbed the player's head with both hands and then, in a sudden manner and without her consent and acceptance, kissed her on the lips. On the first day of the trial, Hermoso had said, while giving evidence, I felt it was totally out of place, and I then realised my boss was kissing me, and this shouldn't happen in any social or workplace setting. I felt disrespected. One of the happiest days of my life was tarnished, and I think it's very important for me to say that I never thought, much less expected, that this would happen. That's all for today's news. We'll be back with you tomorrow, so make sure you're subscribed wherever you listen. In the meantime, you can check out the latest episode of our podcast, The World Leader Leaderboard, where we discuss which heads of government are doing well and who's doing badly every week. And you can find the link for this in the podcast description. This was a TLDR News production, hosted by Georgina Findlay, written by Nadja Lovadinov and Georgina Findlay, and produced by Scarlett Watchorn. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again tomorrow.